Okay, so we are reaching the sort of final stages of Genesis chapter 1 to 3. So there are just a few final topics I want to discuss. As I mentioned in other videos, there are lots of attributes of God which we haven't spoken about yet, but we will speak about them as time continues. And there are a few other topics that I will still do an excursus on, but not at the moment. First want to continue with chapter 4 and getting a little bit further down in Genesis, and then I'll return to some of these topics. They include topics like, maybe sometimes a very scholarly kind of ideas. Where does soul come from? Okay, for some people that's important, right? Are we born with them, or does God create them, or is there a soul heaven somewhere? Okay. So I think you can understand that that's more scholarly, so not really that kind of important. It's important, but for other people, right? Okay, but I will introduce that. So like I said, some other attributes of God. I will still do videos on different models of creation, as well as different creation myths. Myths that were in the Sumerian cultures or other cultures of today, from which some people say the Bible took a lot, or in other words, Moses basically just rewrote or took their stories, myths, as a basis for the first 3 chapters of Genesis. Other theologians say that God, the first 2 chapters is not about God creating material things, but more God made things around the house kind of idea. God creating a house for himself, a temple. So I will still address these kinds of topics in a later date. And yes, there are still sort of a few other topics that, as time goes on, I will address. But I just feel, okay, I need to move on a little bit. So there's 2 topics still kind of left that I want to speak about before I move on to chapter 4, and at later they come back to these other topics I mentioned. If there are any other things you want to have addressed, then please let me know, maybe in the comments or somewhere. I have disabled comments for a number of the videos, because sometimes it can turn into, comments can turn into a mud fight kind of idea, sometimes a blood fight, or very bloody, but we'll see concerning that. Okay, so the topic I want to speak on now, one of the topics left I want to speak on now, is family, right? Genesis chapter 2, God making Adam and God making Eve. In other words, God making men, God making women, or man and woman, okay? Like say Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, kind of idea, right? God didn't make 1 Adam and 3 Eves. God didn't make 1 Eve and 3 Adams, right? So I think you get the idea where I'm going with this. I think clearly from the beginning, God made family, not we. We can try and redefine family today. Yes, sure. I mean, you can redefine anything you want to, but it's not going to change, right? I can call a rose an orchid, but it's still a rose. Okay, so you might think it is an orchid, but it's still not an orchid. You're going to catch hold the rose, kind of, not the flower part, but the bushy part, kind of. You're going to get hurt, kind of idea, from a tulip or something like that. It's not going to happen. Okay, so it's whatever. You're going to get hurt. Okay, if you might think it's something different. You might think you're a cat, right? But you're not going to turn into a cat just because you think you're something. Okay. So in other words, from creation, and since Adam and Eve is our forefathers, is from where we all come, right? I know I'm speaking to Christians here. I'm not speaking to people who don't, non-Christians here, to Buddhists or atheists or other people, right? Who don't believe in the creation. So for us as Christians, the creation model is man, woman. get together, family, leave parents, become a new unity. For the men, the woman, the wife becomes the most important. The same for the wife, not the parents anymore. So the first and foremost now caring for the new family. Okay? So that is the first thing we share. We are redefining marriage. We're doing lots of things like this, but ultimately it does not change God. God doesn't change, and the definition God gave for marriage will still stay the same. Okay, that does not mean to say we need to despise people who think otherwise, or jump on people and crucify them, or have all our sermons addressed against certain people in the church, right? Against guys who like other guys, or women who like other women, right? There's so many sermons on that. I understand it's a hot topic these days, but yes, we will get back to that topic as well on a later date. So, for all of humanity, from the beginning, and this is all cultures, marriage is ultimately between a man and a woman, with, if God so gives, children being born. Not in all cases. Sometimes some women can't bear children. Yes, sure, that's right. Some men can't. Okay, so it's not just a woman's thing, right? Men can as well. There's lots of things that can go wrong. Okay, but ultimately, from it, children can be born. So, a family, therefore, man, woman, and children, as God so wishes. The other thing is just as very important. We see that Adam was made before Eve. And Adam was given the task, or God told Adam to take care of the garden, and he gave him a helper. Okay? So the task was on man, and Eve helping him in doing it. The other thing you remember, Adam was made before Eve. God told Adam to not eat of the tree. And Adam was supposed to teach his wife that, which ultimately and luckily, when he did, he added onto God's words, which ultimately led to the fall. Okay? You can look and watch other videos and see an explanation of that. I'm not going to repeat myself. Right. So, again, that is the structure of marriage for all of humanity. Doesn't matter if you're from Thailand, or if you're from South Africa, you're from America, or if you're from the moon. Right, in the future, if people live on Mars, Elon Musk gets his dream. Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay, it will include all of humanity, anywhere they might find themselves. This is because God is everywhere. So it doesn't matter how far you get in the spaceship and you travel, or in a boat if you're in the past, or in a plane, or wherever, things not going to change. This counts for us all. Okay, so the man therefore has responsibility for his wife. That does not make her less of a human, because she was made in the image of God, just like him. But it means she has different responsibilities than him. Okay, that is just that. Plain and simple. Okay, so no need to fight about it, because ultimately, again, if you have a problem with this, fight with God. Right? This is his plan, this is the way he did it. Okay, so the other very important thing is God made family before God made a state. Okay, God didn't create government, a president or a king, and then he made a family. God made a family first and foremost. And that is a very important thing. Because in many countries in the world, states are now taking over the role of the parents. States are not telling the parents what they are allowed to do with their children and what not allowed to do with their children. Okay, your child is not your child anymore. You can't just take your child out of the school if you need to go and attend a funeral or something like that, or go on a holiday or anything like that, right? Because then you might be put in prison in some liberated European countries. Okay. I know that, yes, I understand why the state sometimes make rules, because there are evil parents out there. But to then usurp the role of the parents just because some parents are evil, no, that's nonsense. Okay, just that's plain not right. It goes against God's creation order. Okay, the state, therefore, and I will do as well later on a video on the role of the state. But here again, the important thing is God first made family. So the first and the foremost important part of society, not the government, not the president, not the prime minister, not the king, not the rulers, the father, the mother, the children, the family. That is the first and foremost building block of society. And anything that goes against that goes against God's word. Okay. So as parents, as family, we need to again retake the role and take up the role as fathers, as mothers, as children. Take up the role that God ordained for us and fulfill that role. Okay, so I will later get back to more aspects of society, but this is enough for now. So God, in Adam and Eve, as our forefathers, from which we all stem, created male, female, family as the first building block to society. From there, everything else follows.